If you have ever tried to make a positive change in your life, whether that's to start exercising or eat less junk food or lose some weight, and you found it hard to make that change and stick with it, you might have beaten yourself up and said to yourself, if only I had more willpower. Or maybe somebody that you know was able to change something major in their life, like maybe they started getting up at 5 a.m. every day to go to the studio for sunrise yoga, and you said, wow, I wish I could do that, but I just don't have the willpower. I don't have the self-discipline for that. So if any of that sounds familiar, then this video is for you. We are going to talk about why it's not willpower that you need, because quite frankly, that is not what's going to help you. I'm going to explain why that is, and then I am going to share with you what you do need instead. Now, if you watched me here on YouTube before, then of course, welcome back. But if you are new to my channel, then welcome. I'm Dr. Kim Foster, and I'm an MD turned coach and wellness expert. I was a family doctor for 20 years before leaving clinical medicine to build my wellness business. And I am also the founder of the Wellness Coach Academy, where I train the next generation of wellness coaches. Here on YouTube, I talk about wellness and business, and I share tons of tips to help you master the art of living well. And if that sounds good, then go ahead and subscribe, because I upload new videos every week. Now let's talk about willpower. Before we get into everything, I want to make sure that we are just really clear on what willpower is exactly. Like, what are we talking about? So willpower refers to your capacity to resist short-term temptations in order to achieve your long-term goals. It's all about your ability to exert conscious control over your emotions and your behaviors, especially when faced with obstacles or distractions. People often use the terms willpower and self-discipline interchangeably, but there are some subtle differences. Willpower generally refers to resisting immediate gratification, but self-discipline is kind of a broader concept that can involve your long-term routines and your consistent habits and choices over an extended period of time. So both of these things, they sound like good tools, right? It feels like if we could just get more willpower or become more self-disciplined, then everything that we will want will be easier, right? We won't give in to temptation, we'll stick to the plan, and then we'll just follow through on all of those things that we said that we were going to do. So it's not your fault if you have thought that that is what you needed to do too, is to figure out just how to get more willpower. It's a natural conclusion and it makes some logical sense. So what is the problem with willpower? Well, there are a couple of pitfalls that come up when people attach just too much importance to willpower and depend on it to help them make some changes. So number one, it's limited. Willpower is a finite resource, meaning it can be depleted. So tell me if you have had this experience. You resisted something for a while, but eventually it got harder and harder to resist. Like, let's say that you're out for dinner with some friends and the waiter brings the dessert menu, but you have resolved to decrease your sugar intake. So you say, no, thank you. And feeling pretty good about that. But then some of your friends decide to order dessert, and then theirs comes. And let's just say that one of them gets this amazing looking cheesecake, and that's your favorite, and your mouth starts watering, and your friend starts talking about how good it is, but then she says, oh, there's too much. Why don't you just have some? And at that moment, the waiter helpfully arrives with a spare fork, and the next thing you know, you are just diving headlong into that melt in your mouth cheesecake, and when you come up for air, you have eaten 2/3 of your friend's dessert that you simply never intended to have in the first place. That is your willpower reserve being depleted. You started out okay, but with every incremental temptation, you had to keep resisting and keep saying no, and eventually you just gave in. The second problem with willpower is that it is unreliable. So the truth is, willpower just may not be there for you when you need it the most. It's way too easily influenced by outside circumstances. Things like how tired you are, how well you slept the night before, what other people are doing, and all kinds of factors like that. Willpower is kind of like that friend who is super fun to be around and always great for going out and partying with, but you're just not going to rely on them to pick you up from the airport, you know? Sometimes the willpower that you need in a certain situation, it's just not there for you. The third problem with willpower is that it gives you an opportunity to beat yourself up. This is really important, and it's a very subtle but insidious way that you can mess with your own mindset. So when you think you need to have willpower to stick with your healthy choices and then you fail to make a healthy choice one time, this is the perfect setup for you to blame yourself and say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have the willpower for this? And how can you be so undisciplined? And then that kicks off a whole blame and shame spiral because it really feels like it's this innate trait, right? Being self-disciplined, and you just don't have it. So you make yourself wrong. And the trouble with that, when we beat ourselves up, is that it's actually very difficult to make significant, lasting change from a place of feeling bad about ourselves. We have to make change from a place of empowerment and a place of feeling good about ourselves. Okay, the fourth problem with relying on willpower is that it gives you a very convenient excuse. So what I mean is this. Let's go back to the example of the friend who has started getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the sunrise yoga. And your response to that is, wow, that would be amazing, but I just don't have the willpower for that. See how you have actually let yourself off the hook by saying this? I want you to really think about this for a minute. When you frame it like this absolute thing, some people have all this willpower and some people don't, and you're lumping yourself in with the people who don't, then you're giving yourself a license to not bother. Don't bother trying. It's not going to work. You don't have the willpower to get up at 5 a.m. Oh well. It's interesting, right? Tell me in the comments if you have never thought about it quite this way before. Do you see now how the idea of willpower can actually become a convenient excuse for staying right where you are? Okay, so now that we know the problem with relying on willpower, let's talk about a better way. So what works better than willpower when it comes to making healthy changes in your life? Number one is to focus on cultivating habits. And here I'm especially talking about small habits that are easy and don't require a lot of willpower in the beginning, things that you can cultivate and then build on, because habits become those unconscious things that we do without really stopping to think a lot about it. And so if it's just what you do, then you don't really need any willpower to make you do it, right? Building healthy habits can be much more sustainable than relying on just willpower alone. And when you consistently practice a behavior and integrate it into your routine, it becomes more automatic and requires less conscious effort over time. So some other tricks and tips that go into the habit strategy are to design your environment to support the habits that you are trying to cultivate, and also design your schedule to support your habits. So just looking at all the ways you can make things as frictionless as possible. An example of modifying your environment is to keep unhealthy snacks out of sight, or, stocking your kitchen with nutritious options. Accountability partners, or even just supportive family members, can also help you to establish your habits, since they can kind of give you a little prod whenever it is that you need it, maybe instead of tempting you with cheesecake. Okay, so what else can you do instead of depending on willpower? My second tip for you is to approach your lifestyle change plans with a sense of curiosity. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by this. What most people do is that they decide that they're going to make a change. Then they try one way to make that change, and then when they can't stick with it, they beat themselves up about it and just give up. Instead, I want you to approach this project like you're doing some experiments to find the best ways that work for you as an individual. And instead of shaming yourself if your first approach doesn't stick, you stay neutral and detached about it, like a scientist would. So you say, okay, so that didn't quite work out the way that I hoped. No problem. Let's just try it this other way instead and see what happens then. Like I say, get curious about it. That's interesting. When I tried to go to the gym first thing in the morning, I really struggled to get there. So maybe I could try stopping into the gym on my way home from work instead and see if that works better. You're watching and observing with detachment. No shame, no beating yourself up. It's not about toughing it out and finding the willpower and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's about finding creative solutions and tailoring your lifestyle to fit your preferences and your personality. Okay, the third approach that I want to share with you is to cultivate the right mindset. So this carries forward from number 2, which is of course all about getting curious and conducting experiments. It's also critically important while you're doing those experiments to stay very aware of your thoughts and the stories that you're telling yourself, and to make sure that you're choosing empowering thoughts and beliefs. Again, as I said, we are successful at making change when we feel good about ourselves, not when we feel bad about ourselves. So you've really got to watch out for those disempowering thoughts that are going to sabotage you. Be on the lookout for times when you say those negative, critical things like, oh, you're useless. What's wrong with you? When I was trying to do more weight training and strength training, I noticed that my early thoughts about this were not very helpful. When I tuned in to the voice in my head, I realized that I was saying things like, it would be so much easier to build this muscle if I were still in my 20s. And this is going to be so hard to get back to the strength that I had when I was younger. I would also look at my trainer and think, oh my God, she is so strong and I am so weak. This is so sad. But how do any of those thoughts help me? They don't. They're only tempting me to just give up the project as a bad habit. They're like the devil on my shoulder, taunting me to stop. So as soon as I caught myself having those thoughts, I immediately started working on replacing them with much better ones. Now, before I do my strength training exercises, I tell myself that my body is amazing. I'm strong and healthy and getting stronger every day. Way better, right? Cultivating the right mindset also often requires looking at what you're telling yourself about your identity. This is so important and possibly the topic of a future video since there's really a lot to unpack. But basically, you want to pay attention to what you're telling yourself about whether this change and your health goal is for you. So let's say you're trying to train for a 5K run for the very first time, but you have an identity as a non-athlete. You're making it so much harder for yourself. Every time you go to put on your running shoes, whether you are aware of it or not, you're going to have to battle uphill through that identity and that inner belief that you are not an athlete and this isn't really for you. You might have thoughts like, what are you doing? This isn't really meant for people like you. Who do you think you are? And fighting against those thoughts will require a lot more, you guessed it, willpower, like fighting against a headwind. Instead, what would it be like if you had thoughts like, I love that I'm becoming a runner, or it's amazing to feel myself becoming more athletic every week, or really just whatever thought would personally serve you. Let's take another example. Let's say you decide that you want to experiment with sobriety. You've seen the movement out there of people just giving up drinking just purely as a health choice. And let's say you would like to see if that would work for you too. But as you begin this project, you're going to need to pay attention to your self-identity around alcohol. So for example, let's say you're at a social event and somebody offers you a glass of wine. You could say, oh, no thanks, I'm trying not to drink. Or you could say, no thanks, I don't drink. See the difference? Which one of those is going to empower you the most? Which one do you think is going to support you in your goal to becoming a non-drinker? These kinds of subtle shifts can really make all the difference. The first one is just so wishy-washy. A persuasive host could easily break through that because, you're just obviously not really that committed to it. Come on, just one glass of wine, join us. But the second one is just a statement of fact. I don't drink. And it's empowered, not just to other people, but more importantly, to you. And what you believe about yourself is what becomes your reality. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the strategies that I wanted to share with you on this. Now, if you are interested in taking the very next step with working on your mindset, your identity, your thoughts, and your beliefs, I would love for you to download the free workbook that I put together. It's called Change Your Mindset, change your life. And the link is in the description box below. So just go ahead and follow that link to instantly download the workbook. As always, I would love to hear from you. What did you think of this idea of, letting go of your dependence on willpower to help you make some healthy choices and instead finding different strategies and different approaches to help you make the changes that you want to make in your life? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, that is a wrap for this video. Take care, have a wonderful day, and I will see you again very soon.